meeting.
Stella, I have unmute yourself. You can start.
Is that correct?
Mute, oh, sorry. I will mute people who are not mute. Just wait a second, Sheila. I will mute people. Okay, Sheila, and okay. And Marilou, you need to unmute yourself. No, I need to unmute yourself. Marilou, where are you? I will check. I will, Marilou, I need to unmute yourself. Just a few seconds. Marilou, I don't see you. Where are you? Just 1 second. I need to unmute Marilou, and I don't see her. Ah, yes, I see you. Okay. Okay. So, Sheila, we can start.
Okay. Really, thank you, Florence, for all of the work that you have been doing to help prepare for this webinar. There's been a couple hours in this preparation, and we are so grateful for your work and also for Patrizia, the communications person with UISG, who also helped us try to put this webinar together for you. We are so happy that you are here to join us for this very important session, a discussion on Querida, Amazonia. My name is Sister Sheila Kinsey. I am the Executive Co-Secretary of the Justice, Peace, and Integrity of Creation Commission for both unions, USG and UISG, and also the coordinator of Sowing Hope for the Planet. Okay, I wanted to be able to share my screen.
Okay. Okay, you're right. Okay, Sheila. Yes, it's okay.
Okay. So we have here really the feeling of being connected, conversions and dreams, looking at challenges and enhancements here. I'm going to try to move this kind of over a little bit. So it's very important to participate in this discussion because this apostolic exhortation from Pope Francis is really addressed to us and to all persons of goodwill. And before we go any further into our discussion, I would like to have Father Armando Picardel, who is a Redemptorist priest and also the Executive Co-Secretary of our Secretariat of the Commission, who will lead us in prayer to help prepare us now for this time together. There's no sound.
Did you share your sound? Did you click? Est-ce que Marilou en espagnol? Sheila.
Yes.
Sheila, you have to share your sound. You have to click on share
Okay,
sound.
so I stop you. You have to do it again, and don't forget to click on sound sharing. When you
Okay.
share your screen, don't forget to click the sound.
Okay.
Don't forget.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Okay, so now it should work.
Okay. Is this, you can hear me now?
Yes, yes.
Okay, let me welcome you.
Yes.
Because you can see, we're at the point of trying to figure out how this all works together. Thank you for being with us, because this is a very important time to share on this important apostolic exhortation from Pope Francis. My name is Sister Sheila Kinsey. I am the Executive Co-Secretary of the Justice, Peace, and Integrity of Creation Commission for USG and UISG for both unions, as well as a coordinator of Sowing Hope for the Planet. And we have been excited and been waiting for this document, Querida Amazonia, because it's addressed to us, the people of God, and to persons of goodwill. So we know that this has been an important time for Pope Francis, calling it Querida Amazonian. It's like a love letter. It's a poetic exhortation to take us to a new place where we can begin to have dreams of what is possible, because we have really worked together to look at what are the realities of these people, of the Amazonian people, as well as ourselves. So going further now with this, I would like to ask Father Armando Picardal, who is a Redemptorist priest and the other co-executive secretary in our office, who will lead us in prayer and help us really prepare ourselves for this afternoon's sharing.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
I cannot move my, wait a minute. Okay, sorry. Almighty and loving Creator, praise be to you. You created a common home for all of us, that we live in communion with you and with one another, and that we may also live in harmony with all creation. Yet our beloved Amazon is being destroyed, which affects all of us because we are all interconnected. Grant us the grace of conversion, and that we make our own the Holy Father's dream for the Amazon, a region that fights for the rights of the poor, a region that can preserve its cultural riches, a region that can preserve its natural beauty. Committed Christian communities incarnate in the region, giving the church new faces with Amazonian features. And this we ask through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Father Picardal, for really bringing us to a very important, receptive moment. To be open to the graces that we will be receiving as we ourselves share what is happening in our own lives as we process what this experience has meant to us. And the pictures that you've chosen really do help us know and understand and be put in a place where we can be receptive to this message this afternoon. So as Pope Francis continues to remind us that everything is interconnected. So even though we're talking about the Amazonian countries here, we can also place our own individual countries in the name of saying Querida, Peru area, United States, Vietnam, Canada. There are many of the dreams that Pope Francis speaks about in regards to the Amazonian area that we will find similarities in our own countries. Our own can have similar dreams. So we will be moving from the conversions written about in the closing document of the Synod to the dreams of Querida Amazonia. We'll be discussing the challenges and developments needed to enrich this message. Pope Francis has decided that rather than focus on the changes for the situations proposed in the final document, the Amazon New Paths for the Church and for an Integral Ecology, instead he shares dreams of the time in which the reality would be transformed. And such dreams do require from us substantial transformation in social systems and in people's consciousness. So for this afternoon, we'll be having two speakers. We already received an opening prayer from Father Armando, but we will have Father Prem Zackler, a Jesuit, associate professor at of theology at the Pontifical Gregorian University, really coming from his basic framework of theology. And also Sister Laura Ventura, a Franciscan, a Clare observer at the Synod, who will be sharing with us from her anthropological understanding. And from that, we will give you an opportunity for questions and comments. That is very, very important to you. And these will be the areas that we will be exploring together, both speakers from their perspective. What are the implications from this document? And what is this new synodology that we keep talking about, and now knowing there is going to be the next synod on the synodology? What are some of the connections to Laudato Si? And what are the relevance to other churches? So these are the perspectives that we will be exploring this afternoon, and as well as others that you would hope to share as well. So I would like to begin then with our first speaker, Father Prem Zackler, Associate Professor, as we said, of Theology. He's also the coordinator of the Laudato Si joint diploma in integral ecology. And that's really coordinating many of the universities here in Rome. And he really works for a foundation, spiritual foundation, and practical action coming out of the whole spirit of Laudato Si. And you can see his own moral theology background coming through in this endeavor. So we are fortunate to have Father Prem speak to us, not only from his Jesuit spirituality, but from the broad perspective he brings to our discussion of Querida Amazonia.
Sheila,
Yes.
who's going to speak now?
Father Prem Zackler, the
Yes,
associate
I have
professor.
to unmute.
I have to
Okay.
unmute.
Yes, you can speak now, Father.
Okay, thank you. This is this one. Yes, share. Okay. Just check.
He needs to have his microphone on.
Okay.
Okay,
Ready?
you're good.
Okay, so good afternoon to you all. And thank you very much for inviting me for this Zoom conference. I'd like to start right away. The title that I have put is Querida Amazonia, Dreams and Conversions. On the backdrop of a sense of claustrophobia and a feeling of uncertainty and fear caused by the coronavirus, reflecting together on the dreams articulated by Pope Francis in Querida Amazonia is indeed an act of hope, tremendous courage, and resolve to face the challenging situations with renewed and rejuvenated spirit. Thanks to Sheila, Kinsey, and UISG for creating a viable platform to share our views and reflections on matters that touch the core of our faith and the integral well-being of the entire humanity. To understand the dreams, hopes, and challenges posed by Pope Francis in Querida Amazonia, his post-synodal apostolic exhortation to the people of God and to all persons of goodwill, we have to go back right to his first days of his pontificate. On 16th March 2013, during the audience to representatives of the communications media, he recounted why he chose the name Francis. Quote, "During the election, I was seated next to Cardinal Claudio Humes, a good friend. And when the votes reached 2/3, there was the usual applause because the Pope had been elected. And he gave me a hug and a kiss and said, 'Don't forget the poor.' And those words came to me, the poor, the poor. Then right away, thinking of the poor, I thought of Francis of Assisi." In his homily during the Holy Mass for the beginning of the Petrine ministry on 19th March 2013, Pope Francis explained the deeper significance of being a protector. Quote, "It means protecting people, showing loving concern for each and every person, especially children, the elderly, those in need who are often the last we think about. We must be inspired by the lowly, concrete, and faithful service which marked St. Joseph to protect all of God's people and embrace with tender affection the whole of humanity, especially the poorest, the weakest, the least important." In his first apostolic exhortation, Evangelii Gaudium, Pope Francis expressed his deep down vision of a church which keeps her doors open like a mother with an open heart and reaches out to those in periphery. Quote, "A church which goes forth is a church whose doors are open, going out to others in order to reach the fringes of humanity does not mean rushing out aimlessly into the world." Then came the groundbreaking encyclical on care for our common home, Laudato Si, which depicted a clear vision of his concern for both the cry of the earth and the cry of the poor. Different narratives of Pope Francis clearly demonstrate his love and concern for the poor and marginalized, who are always the first victims of the ecological degradation. Like Moses, he seems to have heard God's cry to prioritize his life and mission for them. Quote, "I have witnessed the affliction of my people in Egypt and have heard their cry of complaint against their slave drivers, so I know well what they are suffering. Crime and injustice against them amounts to a sin against ourselves and a sin against God, and that is why there is the need of conversion." Pope Francis, in his opening address to the Synod on Amazon, had underlined 4 dimensions: pastoral, cultural, social, ecological, which are in some way reflected in the final document in the form of 4 diagnoses or conversions: pastoral, cultural, ecological, and synodal. Along the same lines, Pope Francis lays out his hopes and aspirations for the Amazonian peoples and Amazonian region in the form of 4 dreams: social dream, cultural dream, ecological dream, and pastoral dream. He prays that the entire church be enriched and challenged by the word of the Synodal Assembly, that all sections of people of the Amazon region strive to apply it, and that every person of goodwill will be inspired by it in some way. The first paragraph of the final document of the Synod underlines that the Amazon today is a wounded and deformed reality, deformed beauty, a place of suffering and violence. Attacks on nature have consequences for the people's lives. And Pope Francis begins Querida Amazonia, edifying the beauty and richness of Amazon region, to put forward his dreams and challenges to the people of God and to all persons of goodwill. Quote, "The beloved Amazon region stands before the beloved Amazon region stands before the world in all its splendor, its drama and mystery. In fact, Querida Amazonia is an invitation to scrutinize the signs of the times and to interpret them in the light of the gospel. It is a poem which weeps for the crimes and injustices and which marvels at the beauty of these forests and their inhabitants." Let us take the first dream, social dream. I dream of an Amazon region that fights for the rights of the poor, the original peoples, and the least of our brothers and sisters, where their voices can be heard and their dignity advanced. The social dream is the integration and the promotion of all the inhabitants of Amazon region so that they are enabled to enjoy good living. The dream is explained in 5-fold fundamental aspects of good living: to fight against injustice and crime, to feel outrage and to ask forgiveness for all the injustices and crimes committed against them, to let full flowering of their sense of communion and community, to gauge the poisonous impact of the broken institutions, and to present the Amazonian region a place of social dialogue for stimulating fellowship and joint struggle. Bringing to the fore the instances of grave social injustice and exploitation suffered by Amazonian people who were killed and enslaved by the colonizing power to seize and plunder natural resources that had held the indigenous peoples for centuries to be nourished and kept healthy, to survive and to preserve a way of life in a culture which gave them identity and meaning. Such instances of exploitation and theft and violence are made legal and perpetrated with the complicity of the local governments, for which they should be called for what they are: injustice and crime. By calling for a feeling of outrage and indignation, Pope Francis guides the way to move past the injustice and crime of the past colonial forces, and now committed by local as well as international powers, using the excuse of development. Quote, "We need to feel outrage as Moses did, as Jesus did, as God does in the face of injustice. A righteous anger could lead to conversion of heart and be a motivating force to build networks of solidarity and development and to promote a globalization in solidarity without marginalization. The social dream envisions the need of a strong sense of community and a sincere commitment to dialogue to overcome injustices and crimes and to build a just society. The cultural dream. I dream of an Amazon region that can preserve its distinctive cultural riches, where the beauty of humanity shines forth in so many varied ways. The cultural dream envisages the recognition, respect, and preservation of the distinctive cultural riches and diversity of the Amazon region. In the face of globalization with marginalization and the resultant cultural colonization, which endangers or threatens cultural identity and unique richness of Amazon people, the cultural dream hopes to bring out the best of itself and to nourish, protect, and to celebrate its richness and beauty. Quote, in each land and its features, God manifests himself and reflects something of his inexhaustible beauty. Each distinct group then, in a vital synthesis with its surroundings, develops its own form of wisdom. Those of us who observe this form from without should avoid unfair generalizations, simplistic arguments, and conclusions drawn only on the basis of our own mindsets and experiences. Each culture and each worldview that receives the gospel enriches the church by showing a new aspect of Christ's face. By presenting the image of the Amazonian polyhedron, Pope Francis exemplifies the beauty of unity in diversity and recommends an intercultural encounter and education that preserve the beauty and uniqueness of indigenous cultures and allow their fruitful development. While addressing the indigenous people of Amazon in Puerto Maldonado on 19th January 2018, he had emphasized saying, an intercultural dialogue in which you yourselves will be the principal dialogue partners, especially when large projects affecting your land are proposed. Recognition and dialogue will be the best way to transform relationships whose history is marked by exclusion and discrimination. The cultural dream identifies a consumerist vision of human beings encouraged by the mechanisms of today's economy as one of the greatest challenges to the diverse cultures of the Amazon region, which impoverishes the perspectives of young people and cuts them off from their roots. Pope Francis urges them to take charge of their roots because the strength to grow, flourish, and bear fruit flows forth from the roots. The cultural dream also proposes intercultural relations where diversity does not mean threat, but dialogue between different cultural visions of celebration, of interrelationship, and of revival of hope. In the face of continuous bombardment from the mass communication and the imposition of foreign measures of quality of life, the cultural dream recommends the promotion of alternative forms of communication based on their languages and cultures, so that their rights are respected, their cultures are appreciated, and quality of life is understood within their world of symbols and customs. Ecological dream. I dream of an Amazon region that can jealously preserve its overwhelming natural beauty and the superabundant life teeming it with rivers and forests. The ecological dream is founded upon heavily on Laudato Si, especially on the fundamental axiom, everything is connected. It offers the hope of preserving the whole ecosystem through an integration of the ancestral wisdom with the contemporary technology, which inspires care and respect for creation with a clear consciousness of its limits and prohibits its abuse. By reiterating the danger of consumerism, which looks at the Amazon only as a resource to be exploited or as an object to be used and abused without scruple, the ecological dream invites us to love it, not simply use it, to awaken our God-given aesthetic and contemplative sense, to contemplate its beauty as God's free gift to humanity and as a part of God's self-revelation. We are firmly reminded that to abuse nature is to abuse our ancestors, our brothers and sisters, creation and creator, and to mortgage their future. The ecological dream is also made of water, which is brought into fore through a poetic hymn in praise of the life-giving water of the Amazon, the queen, which determines every form of life. The hymn is full of wonder, but it also recognizes the painful cry of the Amazon region, used and abused by the technocratic and consumerist paradigm that destroys nature and robs us of truly dignified existence. It emphasizes the urgent need to establish a legal framework which can set clear boundaries and ensure the protection of ecosystem, and disquiets our conscience against our self-destructive vices of trying not to see them, trying not to acknowledge them, delaying the important decisions, and pretending that nothing will happen. Finally, the ecological dream invites the faithful to encounter in the Amazon region a theological locus, a space where God reveals himself and summons his sons and daughters to appreciate the value of creation, concern for justice, option for the poor, and to contribute to the protection and growth of the Amazon region. Ecclesial dream. I dream of Christian communities capable of generous commitment incarnate in the Amazon region and giving the church new faces with Amazonian features. The ecclesial dream is elaborated in 50 paragraphs centered on the proclamation of the gospel, various paths of inculturation, fostering communion and communities, appreciation of the strength and gift of women, and ecumenical and interreligious coexistence. Calling for an impassionate proclamation of the gospel, an ecclesial dream, the ecclesial dream hopes to develop a church with an Amazonian face through various paths of inculturation. With the impassionate proclamation of the gospel, the church constantly reshapes her identity through listening and dialogue with the people, the realities, and the history of the land in which she finds herself. The adoption and integration of the ancestral wisdom, socio-cultural values, customs, and traditions are essential for the evangelization to be successful, not only in the Amazon region, but also in the contemporary world, because the concept of culture is valuable for grasping the various expressions of the Christian life present in God's people. As a starting point of inculturation, Pope Francis emphasizes the need of a respectful and understanding love for the peoples, the affirmation of goodness of various aspects of a culture to create a new synthesis with that particular culture, which can enrich the whole church. While discussing about the inculturation, Pope Francis makes it clear that an indigenous symbol can be taken up in some way without necessarily considering it as idolatry. With regard to the ministry, Pope Francis does not respond to one of the proposals of the final document to ordain as priests suitable and respected men of the community with a legitimately constituted and stable family. In fact, the issue of Viri Prabhati had become so dominant and widespread in the media that it almost threatened to swallow up the entire synod. Last year, on May 16, 2019, when the arguments and discussions on some issues of the upcoming synod on Amazon were warming up, I was asked to coordinate and convene one-day conference in Pontifical Gregorian University on Amazon, challenges and prospects for our common home. The conference aimed at proposing some viable and concrete answers to some of the most fundamental and burning issues related to Pan-Amazon region through common reflections, sharing, and discussions. The church authorities, professors, social activists, and experts on indigenous life, history, culture, tradition, and spirituality were invited to share their views, experiences, and perspectives to safeguard Pan-Amazon region for the integral human well-being. Among the eminent church authorities present as resource persons were Cardinal Claudio Humes, President of REPAM, Cardinal Pedro Ricardo Barreto Jimeno, Vice President of REPAN, and other key figures of Synod. With its gaze firmly fixed on the upcoming Synod on Amazon, the conference tried to respond some of the pertinent questions, doubts, and fears prevalent in the minds of the non-Amazonian people. However, as expected, most of the questions raised by the media were concentrated on the married priesthood or the Viri Prabhati and on the diaconate ordination of women. In Querida, Amazonia, Pope Francis appreciates the mission carried out by the deacons, religious women, and laypersons for assuming regularly important responsibilities for the growth of communities and for keeping the church alive in those places through the remarkable devotion and deep faith. In a way, the ecclesial dream envisages a more participatory and synodal church where the laity plays an important role in decision-making process and in the ecclesial administrative matters. Now, dreams, challenges to an integral conversion. In 1979, Swedish pop group ABBA had released an album with a song, I Have a Dream, which expressed the desire to cope with anything and to take the future even if one fails. The 4 dreams of Pope Francis enunciated in Querida, Amazonia are perennial fount of challenges to introspect our own way of life and living, whether We strive to maintain an interconnected, interdependent, harmonious living with our fellow human beings and the entire creation, or we are hard-hearted by the contemporary trend of individualism and consumerism without any proper and just care for our common home. We destroy the socio-cultural, ecological, and ecclesial dreams by our passivity and inaction in front of injustices, crimes, and exploitations of our fellow human beings, other life forms, and the natural resources. We behave like the three monkeys of Mahatma Gandhi, representing the lack of our positive and creative attitudes. Close our eyes, ears, and mouth in front of injustices and crimes. It would be apt here to remember the words of Martin Luther King. The ultimate tragedy is not the oppression and the cruelty by the bad people, but the silence over that by the good people. Coming from the Oraon indigenous community from Jharkhand, India, I feel very at home with the dreams and challenges articulated by Pope Francis in Querida, Amazonia. Right from the childhood, I have lived a life which is deeply interconnected with nature and guided by a spirituality based on 5 J's: Jan, Jal, Jungle, Jameen, and Janwar. That is humans, water, forest, land, and household animals. The happiness in the earthly life consists in the abundance of cattle, crop, and progeny, whereas the ultimate happiness lies in the final reunion with the ancestors. Nature is the epiphany of the divine, in and through which God reveals himself and his will for the integral well-being of each individual and the entire human community. However, the constant threat of being displaced from our ancestral land by the multinational forces in the name of development shatters our socio-cultural and ecological dreams and intensifies our struggle to maintain good living by letting the full flowering of human dignity, justice, equality, and equity. The socio-cultural, ecological, and ecclesial dreams call for our conversion and challenge us to adopt a communitarian approach to existence and the ability to find joy and fulfillment in an austere and simple life, and a responsible care of nature that preserves resources for future generations. The challenge before us is to cultivate without uprooting, to foster growth without weakening identity, to be supportive without being invasive. The challenge lies in the dream of cultivating and caring for Amazon without destroying it, in the dream of integrating the ancient indigenous wisdom and cultures with new technologies, and in the dream of making them active participants in search of their well-being. Finally, we are challenged to build a future worthy of the dreams articulated by Pope Francis in Querida, Amazonia. A future where both the cry of the earth and the cry of the poor are heard. A future where their idea of good living is respected, accepted, and actualized for themselves and for those who will come after them. Indeed, a good cultural, spiritual, and educational challenge stands before us, and it will demand that we set out on the long path of renewal. Querida Amazonia encourages us to dream for a better future and to raise our voices against injustices, crimes, exploitations, intended and carried out by the unjust structures. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Father Prem Axlow, for a very thoughtful, reflective presentation from your theological background. I mean, I've seen your paper, so I know how well researched and reflected your thoughts have been as you shared them today. Beginning with the historical perspective of the mind of Pope Francis, and you as a Jesuit have that inside feeling of knowing how he really has been developing his own thinking. And you helped us really gain a deeper understanding of that, which was a very important gift for us. And your careful reflection, including also your own experience. So showing how you have been able to move from your theological understanding and all that you have to deal with in the moral aspects, people that you have to interact with, and to bring that then to your own home, to your own roots, and be able to make that integral connection is really, really important. So we want you to know how grateful we are for you to tell your story from the integrity of your own personal life, your life as a Jesuit, and helping then spread for us the global implications of the message of Pope Francis. So thank you, Father Prem, for that gift for us today.
Thank you, Shira.
Share sound.
Okay.
So we have another speaker for us today, which is Sister Laura Vincunha. She's a Franciscan sister. She's an indigenous sister who was one of the observers at the Amazonian Synod for the Religious, for CLAR, which is the religious group of sisters from Latin America and also from the Caribbean. And it was that experience from her own work as a coordinator of the Indian Missionary Conference of the Bishops of Brazil and Romania, that has helped her bring her experience to the fore in a way that she never anticipated this happening to her. And because of her involvement in the Synod, not only the Synod, but the Casa Común, that was many presentations and liturgical celebrations and prayer services that happened around the Synod experience, that she found that she is now being called to be a member of the post-Synod Council. So we're very fortunate to have her be able to share with us her experience, her insights from an anthropological perspective, emphasizing again the social and the cultural, and where that has led the people in the Amazonian area, the indigenous people, now to have to be able to share that voice with others. So Sister Laura, please share what you have for us today. Okay.
Laura, can you speak? I will unmute yourself. I will do it. So now you can speak. Sorry, because we were doing it together. Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Yes.
You are going to speak in Spanish?
Yes.
Va a hablar en español. Okay.
Sí.
Yes, in Spanish.
Sí.
Can I speak?
Sí, sí.
Sí.
People need, okay, yes, we will see. Yes, you can try.
Peace to all those who are listening and sharing this moment. I'm going to speak about the exhortation Querida Amazonia, dreamt since from the Amazon, We, the Amazon peoples, are carriers of a great ancestral legacy, guardians of an old culture and the necessary biodiversity for the life of their inhabitants and the planet. We have the responsibility to care and love this huge land with its trees, forests, animals, colors, knowledge, and tastes. For centuries, for decades, for years, the Amazon and the peoples have been and often continue being invisible in a situation of underdeveloped and exotic and popular people. The synodal process and the Amazon put the Amazon people at the center of the reflection and at the heart of the church, and the realities present in our territories are now visible, such as the exploitation and the environment degradation because of the mining industry, because of the exploitation of materials and the killing of indigenous people, the growing migration and increase of the poverty belts in the cities. Also, we also had the opportunity to show the richness of the original and Amazon peoples with their cultures and spirituality and their religiosity. Everything is interconnected. If we do not care for our common home, this common home, we will not have possibility to live, us and the whole planet. We have the word of Pope Francis about the Synod of the Amazon that arrived in a loving and concerning fashion, just how can the Amazon land with its enchantment and disenchantment, often present in poems that become a prophecy. Manuel Barro, a poet, helps us understand the dimension of poem and prophecy. If one supports if you hold the water, it will escape through the cracks. If you take freedom away from a being, he will escape through metaphors. The apostolic exhortation, Querida Amazonia, would not be a repetition of the final document of the Amazon Synod, New Paths of Conversion for the Church and the Amazon, and for an integral ecology. It has its own peculiarity, without forgetting the first purpose for this synod, new ways of evangelization for the Church, the Amazon, and for a comprehensive and integral ecology, the cry of the original and Amazon peoples, and the cries that come from our common home. To read it in a critical and prayerful manner and to seek answers in this exhortation, we need to take into account the Laudato Si exhortation about the care of our common home, and the systematized document during the synodal process, the Instrumentum Laboris, and the final document. Without these previous contexts, we could not read this document completely. We would be doing a partial reading, and we would not hear all the resonance from the church about this synod, that we can summarize in this manner: the cry of the poor, including the original people, the cry of the common home, new paths for evangelization for the Amazon and for the church as a whole. This applies to the entire world because throughout the world we have the poor. We also have problems about our common home, and the church must also have an answer and give its answer. Pope Francis, through Querida Amazonia, wanted and wants to promote in the church and in society an awareness of comprehensive ecology, calling us to a global pact. Everything is interconnected since everything is destined for all people of goodwill. A reflection that can help and guide the entire church for a fruitful and creative reception, to lead us to a construction of new paths for the Amazon that were discussed during the synodal process. The exhortation is not a final word, it is a path that needs to be followed and built. The issues that were dealt with in Querida Amazonia are a provocation and a possibility to look for new ways, new paths for the Amazon, but also for the entire world. The orientation of this final document is clear and objective. The word of action is conversion, and in its 5 dimensions: integral, pastoral, cultural, ecological, and synodal conversion. That was the call during the synod. That's why we have to relate conversion and dreams. Pope Francis, in his exhortation, Querida Amazonia, recalls the dimensions of the conversion in a manner that calls the church in the Amazon and the church as a whole and people of goodwill to a dimension of commitment to the poor, to indigenous people, descendants from Africa, peasants, migrants, young people, women, and the poor, into dreams for the Amazon. Along with the indigenous people, we rescue the voice of the Amazon as a prophecy, elevating its voice in announcing God's kingdom and good living, and denouncing the structures of death that affect the original indigenous people and the Amazon people and our common home. The world needs dreams and utopia. To keep the flame of hope alive is the greatest challenge we must face today in the world. Pope Francis recovers this prophetic dimension under the form of a proposition. In the social dimension, I dream of an Amazon that fights for the rights of the poor, of the original people, that promotes their dignity. In the cultural dream, he dreams, and so as we dream of an Amazon that will preserve the cultural richness characterized by a human beauty that shines in a diverse fashion. The ecological dream, I dream about an Amazon that jealously preserves the natural beauty, decorating it, the overabundant life that fills its forests in the ecclesial dream. And this is the major challenge. He dreams of Christian communities capable of engaging and incarnating in the Amazon and being incarnated in the Amazon so as to give to the church new Amazonic traits. This is what Pope Francis asks of us and asked of us during the whole process and the synod, for the church to forge its face in the Amazon. The Amazon is pluri and diverse. There are 9 countries, Brazil, Bolivia, Colombia, Ecuador, Guyana, Peru, Suriname, Venezuela, French Guyana, interconnected by the Amazon biome. The four dreams presented in the exhortation in Amazonia inspire us and commit us to take care of the poor with the richness of the people, with the common home, and a church incarnating its face in the Amazon. The poet sings, I dream that a dream can only be an illusion. A dream that is dreamt together is a sign of solution. Therefore, my friends, let's start dreaming. Let's dream faster. Let's dream in a collective effort. The whole world needs men and women capable of being inspired by the dreams of Pope Francis about the Amazon, so that all can have life and life in plenitude. The social dream is an imperative for the church to have a prophetic voice and an engagement, a commitment to defend the poor and the vulnerable, so that the good living can happen. We cannot do dichotomies between the social reality and the serious problems that occur in the environment, since one thing is closely related to other. The cry of the poor and the cry of the earth, social reality. What we have today in the Amazon is in part due to colonization, the economic projects, the lack of commitment of the states with the Amazon people. What makes this land into a land of injustice, threatened by local economic agents, as well as regional, national, and international ones, implementing a model of development that is foreign to our land, to the detriment of the well-being of the Amazon peoples and indigenous people, causing great violence and violations of the rights of the original people and the Amazon people. The cultural dream issues a call to the church so that it is an ally of the original people and recognizes to the Amazon and its people a role of protagonism in their history. The Amazon has a unique cultural diversity. However, it is threatened in its integrity, both physical, cultural, as well as territorial, especially the isolated indigenous people, the more vulnerable ones, due to the action of organized crime and the omission of national states. As a church, we face the challenge to make a commitment to defend the lives, the land, and the rights of the peoples in a response to the evangelical principle of life for all, the ecological dream. We cannot do dichotomies between the social dimension and the environmental one. These are closely related, closely connected. The Amazon is interconnected by water, rivers, forests, land. The way in which the Amazon is treated endangers the life of the peoples, the forest, the water life in general. The development for the consumerism is threatening the whole life of the planet. We urgently need to rescue the wisdom of the people along with the current technical knowledge. In this effort, we may take up a path of integral ecology. This calls us to re-educate our attitudes to make them more practical and to be educated in solidarity. We need to live a happy sobriety and rediscover that that to be rich is to need less. We need to take care of and to defend the most threatened peoples, the poor and the common home, crying for life. The care of the people, the care of the common home, those are inseparable concepts in order to reach integral ecology. And lastly, the ecclesial dream to walk together. The church needs a synodal conversion, the synodality of the people of God under the guidance of the Spirit in the Amazon. This is the text of the final document. We need to grow in a synodal and ministerial dimension, fostering a culture of dialogue, of encounter, and the discovery of the richness of unity and diversity, multiple harmony. This requires innovation and creativity from our part in front of the huge challenges present in the Amazon, the cry of the poor and of the common home. By nature, the church is kerygma, diaconia, and prophecy. It's announcement, service, and prophecy based on the gospel. Without this process of conversion and enculturation, the good news would not give a face and shape to the Amazon. The great call of Pope Francis since the beginning of the Synod of the Amazon in Puerto Maldonado wants to ensure that the church can forge its face in the Amazon and learn from the original and Amazon people to care for life. And to conclude by saying that the exhortation is a word of encouragement, a path, not a final and closed response. We were all anxiously waiting this exhortation, waiting for responses to these proposals presented during the synod, present in the final document. Women, ordination of married men, Eucharist. We have the final document to open paths of synodality and ministry in local spaces based on the needs. But it is also urgent to overcome the androcentric model, searching for and building new anthropologies and new relations of power within the church, where women, religious life and consecrated life, the laity, ecclesial communities can be recognized, as well as their mission as evangelizers and defenders of life. Synodality is a path that is being built in the church. It's pretty old. We've been talking about synod and synodality for 50 years. But it is very necessary and very current. The final document invited us and motivated us to take up new ways, new paths for the church in the Amazon and for a comprehensive and integral ecology. It is also true that in order to travel on this path, we need to learn, unlearn, and learn again to become a church in the Amazon. So we cannot think of this exhortation, dear Querida Amazon, without thinking of what the encyclical Laudato Si did and is doing for us, and without thinking of the whole synodal process. We're taking step by step, and we have to take all this into account as to all these matters that are still pending and that we need to travel on. Thank you.
Thank you, Sister Laura, for sharing your insights, your perspective. I mean, you now are at the grassroots working with the bishops. You're trying to find a new way because those questions have not been answered. You want to look at how can we deal with the sharing of the power, helping bring religious women into the fore in a way that's being suggested. It needs to be done, but we have nothing decided yet. And there is the concern that that it needs to be to the fore, otherwise we don't want to lose it in our way going forward. And yet, as you so well have said, that we have to look at the total perspective. Where is the Amazon? What voice are you giving for the church to hear and to move forward? So we thank you for your valuable insights and how you continue to work with the leaders of the church and the people, trying to bring them together and to help gain and share with us the understanding of the precious gifts of the indigenous people with whom you work with and whom you are. You bring that integrity to your message, an important message for today, to care for our common home. And you know, it is a time when the indigenous voice is coming forth, so you're strengthening it and you're sharing the richness of that heritage with us. So I'd like to put a face on this for us. The Casa Común was a video that can kind of put a face now on all the things that Sister Laura said. It's a brief video. And then from that, there are some questions that we certainly want to give to our two speakers to see and to hear some of their responses to that. Again, it's a way of how do you push and bring the message forward in the areas that you're working in? How do you help create a vision from the church? How do you begin to develop a new way of looking at things that Pope Francis has asked us to do, and any efforts that you have begun to do with that? Persons have been asking, yes, they want the talks both in English and in Spanish, so if the authors are agreeable to that, we will make those available to you. So again, we're on this very important journey together. But again, I think if we see this video on the Casa Común, we'll know we need to be together on this journey.
You want to put a video,
Yeah,
Sheila?
I gotta get the.
Don't
yeah.
forget to click for the sound.
See, I have to get that. Okay, that did it.
And share your screen. And you have to share your screen at the bottom.
Okay. Let me get this back again.
You have to share. It's the bottom of your screen, the green square.
Okay, here we go. Here we go.
And you.
Okay, and I need to share the screen.
Now the screen is shared. You need to find your video.
Okay.
You can close this one.
Okay, the video needs to come here. The video. Oops. Okay, let me get that.
You open your Explorer.
I'm having a problem here with sharing the screen.
I will stop your sharing of the screen and you look for your video first.
Oh.
Look for your video.
Okay, the video just went. I think we lost the video here. No, the video is not there now. Okay.
Did you find it?
No, the video is it's no longer, it's lost in the part above. So why don't we go ahead with some of the questions, and I'll see if I can find it later on. Okay.
Okay. So if some people have some question for the speakers, you can ask your question by chat, or you can raise the hand and I will give you, or you will be able, I will give you the opportunity to unmute your microphone. Okay, and I will have also to just a few seconds, we are finishing.
Well, let me ask one question. I have an opportunity to do that. Laura, what have you done since you've been back in your area to kind of promote the message of the Synod?
Just wait, because I mute Marilou and I try to find her. She's mute and she cannot mute herself.
I'm fine now.
Okay.
I'm fine.
Okay.
I'm fine.
Okay.
I'm okay.
You can ask your question.
Okay. Laura, what have you been able to do with the bishops and with the people with whom you work to help share the message of the Synod? Because so you probably have had mixed reactions because there were certain anticipations in terms of things being resolved at the Synod, which were not. So how do you find yourself moving the message forward, giving the different reactions that you're receiving?
To whom are you? Yes, you can unmute your microphone, Laura. Yes, perfect.
In the Amazon, we are in a situation of making this exhortation known. Our intention is for Querida Amazonia to be a document read just as much as Puebla, which really became a popular document. And we have several stories about the exhortation Querida Amazonia, but even 2 days ago, we had a meeting with the bishops and some people who participated to the synodal process in Rome. And we were reflecting on how to make it a reality independently from what the commission does and an actual call from the commission. We do see that it is urgent and necessary to work at the exhortation, Querida Amazonia, along with the final document for the Amazon, because there are several proposals for some issues that remained pending, but also attach the reflection on the exhortation along with the encyclical Laudato Si. We cannot lose this common thread in this call to take care of the poor and the care for the common home. But we really need to overcome in the church this androcentric vision, this perspective, and to have new anthropologies where the person, life, the common home are placed at the center to share these relations. The exhortation doesn't close anything, it is open to the issues. For example, Vire Probati develops an apology that is very centered on Christ and very androcentric as well, but the final document gives the possibility to do it in accordance with the reality in each place. And the great cry that we have today in the Amazon, I was listening to the indigenous people in a community. The people are not concerned about ordination or other. They're concerned about their territories being invaded, exploited, and threatened. And if the church provides a prophetic response to this, new relations can start to be built. At least that is the point I see. I really feel great joy because of this exhortation. It opens new paths. And the great challenge in this ecclesial dream is to truly establish living communities, ministerial communities with an Amazon face. And once we manage to do this, I think that other situations may be overcome.
Thank you. Thank
Ella,
you.
we have some question on the chat, and I will ask Patricia to do it. No, Patricia, che lingua tu? Which language are you speaking?
Sorry, English here, yeah.
Okay, okay.
I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes.
Okay, yes, Sheila, there are various questions here for both speakers. So I can read them, and I would ask the two speakers to write down the questions so they can later take a session for answer. So there are a lot of congratulations for all of you, you know. The first one in Spanish. Flo, I have to change the room, the language.
If you speak Spanish, yes. No.
¿Le voy? ¿Aquí?
No.
¿Puedo hacerlo aquí?
Yes. Marilu change, but not you.
Ok. Entonces, soy educadora y quisiera
I'm an
saber...
educator and I'd like to know.
Quiero saber cuáles
I'd like
retos se
to know
pueden
what
desprender para
challenges
darle un
can
giro
be
ecológico al paradigma educativo.
faced in order to give an ecological turn to the educational paradigm.
How can women share power and authority when Canon 129 outlaws such sharing by not ordained persons? The third one, Spanish. Después del documento sinodal.
After the synodal document,
que deja mucho camino por andar. ¿Cuál es el próximo paso?
that leaves a lot of things to be done. What is the next step?
The issue of the ordination of women may be a bit blown by the media, but I think it remains a real issue. Do you really think the interest in women deacons is only media driven? Okay, I think.
Yes, no. Yeah. Want Prem to start this time? Okay, because Laura had the last one. Father Prem?
So you can unmute yourself. Yes, perfect.
Is it okay now?
Yes, it's okay.
No, first, The first question I like to respond to what she was saying about sharing power, what they call quoting Canon 129. I don't have the canon law. I'm not a canon student of canon law, but I have not read this canon. So, but what Pope Francis is saying, it's very clearly. No, I'll give you the number. First, I'll read what he says in Querida Amazonia, in number 100. This summons us to broaden our vision, lest we restrict our understanding of the church to her functional structure. He uses the word, such a reductionism would lead us to believe that women would be granted a greater status and participation in the church only if they are ordained to holy orders. And Pope Francis, right from the beginning, if you have noticed, now whenever he's giving a talk, he's trying to show to the priests or those who are ordained that this is not a matter of power. It is more a power of but the service of to sanctify. That's why he has always spoken against the clericalism, what we say, the exercising power and power and power. But what he's saying, each one in the church, even though the priests they carry out the hierarchical power, so to say, what powers they have given to celebrate Eucharist and hear the confessions. Apart from that, which power we want to share? That is definitely what what they call final document, it explicitly says those women who are working in the Amazon, the religious and others, are doing very well by even in the absence of the priest, baptizing, catechizing, praying, and acting as missionaries. So these are some of the activities done very well by our religious sisters and religious men, those who are not ordained. The second question I would say, during the meeting of the superior generals in Rome, Pope Francis has very clearly told that the issue has been given again to the commission of the sisters for to discuss further about the ordination. Now, you remember last year when you met in Rome. Again, I would say I would like to repeat the number 100. When we talk only about what he says, such a reductionism would lead us to believe that women would be granted a greater status and participation. I would use the word only if they are admitted to holy orders. So I think he is trying to give more in terms of services that we oriented to the church and to the people of God. So whether we are ordained or not, definitely in the previous I had this by regarding this. 1 minute. How many questions were raised during the synod, or how many issues were discussed, but this particular issue of ordination of the Viri Probati and ordination of women as deacons, these two issues were actually blown out by the media, as you are saying, driven by media, because definitely we are not saying whether the Pope Francis wanted to discuss, but he does not mention anything in Querida Amazonia. I don't know whether I have responded all the three issues. This is the real issue what you are talking about, but the issue has been given back to the superior generals during your meeting. The commission, it has been given again. Sheila and Florence might be knowing it very well. Was it given it back to your commission for review it again, discuss it further, that particular issue?
The commission that was established didn't come up with anything conclusive. And so they're continuing on their study. I don't know if there's been any meetings called since that time, but that was the message that Pope Francis gave at the assembly meeting in May. Okay. At this point.
And probably regarding power in number 101, Querida Amazonia, he mentions very clearly the women have to carry out the kind of power that is typically theirs. So whatever they can contribute, apart from what he's saying, they're celebrating the Eucharist and confession that he says typically for the priests in number 88. Apart from that, because he says these are the sanctifying power given to the priest. Apart from that, that kind of power that is typically theirs, they are free and they are encouraged to carry out. That is what he's saying in this point. So apart from that, I am not in a position to say what is the thinking of the church authorities on that line. But definitely, I would go back. That is the only parameter to judge whether the women have the power or they are kept out of the administrative power of the church.
Did Laura want to say something in regards to those questions? Thank you for sharing what you're able to at this point, Father Zaxlow. Laura, did you have something moving that you would like to share?
I would just like to say, really, I don't understand anything about canon law. It is not my area. I haven't studied it. But I'd like to say that during the Synodal Assembly, the petition was to call this commission back so that the commission would work on this issue again, on the issue of the women deacon. On this point, Pope Francis, during the assembly, he answered by saying, yes, we are going to review. We're going to call new people for this commission, and yes, it will be done. So just to clarify, it's not that the final document asked for the ordination of women. We asked that the commission should reflect again on this point. And I think that from the perspective of us women in the Amazon, the indigenous people, we have roles that are very well defined in our structure, what pertains to the woman, what pertains to men, and that there's no ambiguity. But in the church, again, we need to overcome, to go beyond this vision, this view of the roles of the women, because during the meeting we had 2 days ago with the bishops here in Brazil, precisely to promote this exhortation and the post-synodal process in Brazil, we said that we know that those that promote the life of the church in the Amazon are the women, and we are aware of this as to everything from a social, political, ecclesial perspective, but this is not always recognized officially in the church. We have to take some steps as to this. We need some steps, no doubt. And again, what was asked for during the synod was to reestablish the commission, and Pope Francis already gave us that answer, but we have to take steps. I don't know whether the commission was established yet. We don't know this, but we should not stay at this point. The synod gave so much strength. It was Alvire Probate and the ordination of women were emphasized so much that we almost lost the purpose of the synod to think of new ways, new paths in a church that already has a long history in the Amazon, how to establish new paths on a path that was already established during centuries. The other questions, I already slipped out of my mind.
I think if some people have more questions, you can unmute your microphone and ask the question if you want. You just unmute and you can ask in the language that you want, in English or in Spanish.
Hello.
And Patricia, do you have more questions from the church? But if some people would like
Yes,
to ask
there are questions in the chat, but I don't know if we have time, Sheila, to read more questions. I can try, you know. There are a lot of comments and questions about the Women Deacons Commission, but I don't think this is the, you know, the place to talk more in depth about that. This is not the issue in my, I mean, in my sensitivity. So I can just recuperate something from the beginning. Esto, para Laura, en español.
For Laura in Spanish.
¿Qué cambio de mentalidad hay que
What
abrir
change
en
of
las
mindset
personas
do we
para
need
que
to establish in
respondan a
people so they
este
can
llamado sueño
respond to
cultural
this so-called
y
cultural
llamado
dream
sinodal?
and synodal call?
Questa la empatia si no se vive in situ.
Empathy is difficult if we do not
¿Cómo
live on
generar ese
location. How
encuentro
can
que
we
pase al
generate
corazón
that
del hombre sin
encounter
compartir
that goes through the
con la
heart of
otredad
men
experiencia?
without sharing the experience of others?
Another question in English that is not a question, it's more a comment regarding sharing of power. Let's think in a synodal circular discernment, listening, action process more than in terms of hierarchical patterns, and so a more feminine mode of sensibility, sharing. Thanks to both. I just want to underline that the next synod will be on synodality, so we have a lot of time to talk about that. There are a lot of messages of thanks for both of the speakers. So I don't know if Laura can answer the question. I don't know if the father want to add something.
Patricia, I just want to say one thing here. Now, yeah, you have used twice this sharing of power, real issues, and then the women deacons. But I think for Pope Francis, if you have seen his life as Pope right from the beginning, he has never used that what we talk about power. He talks about more of service and sanctifying power. That means it doesn't matter whether we have that. That's why I like his words using. No, we are not trying to concentrate on certain issues which were marginally discussed definitely during the Synod, but larger issues we try to forget when we talk about these two issues. No, I am talking today. I am coming back to these two issues: the ordination of the laymen, worthy to be Labiri Probati, and of course the ordination of the deacons. Because I think Pope Francis is trying to always tell us it is not the power that we try to impose on others or carry out, but it is a service, spirit of service. And that's why he is always talking against the clericalism. Clericalism is a huge problem in the church. That's what he's saying again and again. And what today we're talking about is what you use the word hierarchical power. Rightly you use that power, because this is how the clericalism comes in. And then we try to behave as if, as in states they use the term, the parish priest is the boss or the priest is the boss, the final decision. And that's why one good thing will come out when we'll talk about the synodality. The next synod then comes out. The church becomes more participative the voices is heard. When you're talking about the hearing the voice of the earth, the cry of the earth and cry of the poor, if you're not able to hear the voice of our own faithful, those who are part of the church, how are we going to exercise our power itself? So that is one of the questions you are rightly asked. So thanks for raising this question, Patricia.
I have a question I've written.
I think Laura, Laura, puedes compartir algo sobre la pregunta
Can you share something about the question?
sobre cómo facilitar este proceso que
About
yo te
how
había
to
leído en
facilitate
español?
this process that I had read to you.
Se cortó un poco.
You were
Bueno,
breaking
yo voy
up.
a leer un momentito la pregunta
I'm
otra vez en
going to
español. No
read
hace
the
falta que tú la
question
traduzcas en
again
inglés otra
in
vez.
Spanish. You don't need to translate
¿Qué
it into
cambio
English
de
again.
mentalidad hay que abrir en las personas para que respondan a este llamado sueño cultural y llamado sinodal? Cuesta la empatía cuando no se vive in situ. ¿Cómo generar este encuentro que pase por el corazón del hombre sin compartir con la otra edad de experiencia? ¿Y cuánto aprender de su cuidado a la casa común?
I'm going to speak based on what I feel. The cultural dream, we talk about what is polyedric, and this applies to the whole world, not just the Amazon. Today, with globalization, we have the possibility to also know other cultures, other people. But for this, we need to, we always speak of dialogue, but we have to take a further step. We have to speak of polydialogues. And sometimes we cannot have the gaze of the other, but we can place ourselves in the other's shoes, in the place of the other. And the cultural dream, I think, calls us to this, to recognize this richness, to come to know this polyhedron that is the Amazon. Jesus is there, is in it, because there are people there who have a very ancient cultural legacy and inheritance, just as the other people. All the people have a cultural legacy and inheritance of spirituality. What we do need is to establish this solidarity, this closeness, this proximity that Pope Francis is asking for, and this movement to go forth. And this requires from us some processes of conversion. It is only through conversion processes that we can truly look and feel without being in the place, by creating this solidarity and this sensitivity, because the other is the one who's different from us. And we have this on our side. During the days that I was in Rome, we had the opportunity to look at the other cultures coming from other parts, and all these cities and all the places. You coexist with the other. So in this cultural dream, we must realize one thing: we can lose our leaves, but not our roots. We have to have this experience of being rooted in the other, and try to understand the other based on the other, from the other's perspective, and not our own. I don't know whether I answered the question. Thank you, Laura.
Thank you very much. I mean, we've really been able to ask the questions of our hearts. We didn't develop more on the deacon issue. We don't have all the information that's being asked of, so we wanted to stay with what we know. And I think bringing these two speakers together for us, Father Prem Zaklo and Sister Laura, to share from their experiences, from their hearts in an honest way, as best as they can, and to try to help us find a new way at what we're hearing being said, the call to holiness. And Pope Francis has often used that term. And I take heart, there was some sharing done by a group called the Global Catholic Climate Movement Board, met with Pope Francis for over an hour. They are partners with us in the Sowing Hope for the Planet. But Pope Francis shared his writing of Laudato Si and said the writing of that encyclical was a conversion experience for him. He said when he wrote the document to help edit the document from the Aparecida, and he kept hearing the people from Brazil talking about the Amazon, the Amazon, the Amazon. He said, okay, I'll put this in the document. Little did he realize that that would continue to simmer and come to the point where we now have a cyclical, and in the writing of it, there is that sense of conversion for himself. So I can't help but think on many of these issues that are open, that are just kind of put out there, that he's calling for himself, he's calling for all of us to look at where is the conversion that needs to take place so the dreams that we have shared here can be a reality. So he's calling us to be there with him, you know, to do our part to make a difference. And so I thank our speakers, in particular for the sharing and the work that you did to put your documents together and your openness to respond to some difficult questions put to you. To Sister Florence and to Patricia Morganti to put together this technical piece as we're trying to move together with that, and the patience that all of you have exhibited to be here with us in kind of a cumbersome way, being together. As we all face, and we know we are interconnected, this coronavirus is affecting all of us, and in a particular way of a lockdown here in Italy, but it's going elsewhere. So we know we are here together. And the next event for us will be April 7th, the webinar that we will have for Sowing Hope for the Planet, and we'll talk more about the methodology that we want to be using, that people can be involved in making a difference with our planet. I see, Anne, you still are questioning something, or anyway, this is.
Okay, I can send it.
Okay.
Yeah, I watch.
Have you finished?
Not sure that Anne Favolia wasn't trying to.
She's on the phone. She wanted to ask a question, but she's on the phone now.
Oh, okay. Have any last comment that they would like to make? I would like, I hope they would feel free to do that. Either Father Prem or Sister Laura, any closing comment that you would like to make?
First of all, thank you, Sheila and Florence, for organizing this webinar, because it is an important document which touches our life. Now, touches the core of our life. Once we talk about dream, we have to dream not as daydreaming, but it is like a challenge, that leads to a complete transformation of our life. And then, as we say, we have to dream all the time. It is not a kind of dreaming and looking for something, but it is a vision for the future. I think Querida Amazonia offers this vision for us. now from different perspectives of love: social, ecological, ecclesial, that is a beautiful one, and also from the cultural perspective, that is very much very important today, wherever we go in this world of globalization, in positive sense, we share, we encounter, and we enrich with each other. So these are the dreams the Querida Amazonia offers to all of us. That's why I like the word he uses, no, to people of all goodwill. So it is addressed to all of us. So let us continue to dreaming, but not daydreaming, but setting a vision, setting a goal, and that goal we have to strive to achieve in due time. So thank you all again for your participation and your patience to listen to us, to our sharing. Thanks, Sheila. Thanks, Florence, again.
Thank you.
I just, before we finish, I just want to say that please download the last version of Zoom for next time. If you, with the last version, you can choose the language and cut and remove the original voice. And I have seen also with the last version that you can download on your smartphone. It's working. So you can also use your smartphone, but with the last version of Zoom. They just started this possibility of translation in March. So we are already, I think, for us, it's the first time to use it like that. But I hope for you it was working and you didn't have to listen to two birthdays at the same time. And thank you for participating.
Sheila, may I just invite people to the next two USG events?
Sure, sure, go ahead.
One is connected with the Querida Amazonia. So the first one, the next one will be March 24th, where we will interview Sister Chiniaka, a Nigerian sister who wrote this book on interculturality in religious life. Will be in English and in Italian. We will send you the link. Actually, you have to register on our website, usg.org. You will find everything. And the other event is March 28th, where we will talk about Querida Amazonia, but we will not talk. We will pray on Querida Amazonia. So it's more, I wouldn't call it a retreat, but it's more a reflection, a contemplative time on that. We will send you more information.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, and stay healthy. God bless you.
God bless. Thank you.
Thank you.